Welcome back to what is actually like episode 53 or something like that. But today it's episode 2 of our solo podcast. Welcome back to the Post School Podcast. I'm your host, Uncle Nathan, and today we're talking all things moving out. So if you haven't listened to the previous solo episode, I wanted to change the podcast up a little bit and start recording these solo eps so that I can share a bit about my experience over the last 2 years, which has been primarily based in Bali. I moved overseas at 21 and started a whole new life over there, working online, building up a marketing agency, and working a little bit on the podcast, but I let that take a back seat because I had to focus on actually making money. But yeah, I wanted to share experiences around that. So today's episode is going to be based on moving out of home. Now for me, the expectation of what moving out might feel like versus the reality were two very different things. I moved to Bali as excited as ever. For me, moving to Bali or just moving overseas in general was the dream. And to be able to do it at 21, I felt so lucky and I was so excited to get over there and get into building this new life. I have had a very lucky and privileged upbringing. All my parents are very close-knit. My family is very loving and supportive, and we've never gone a day without food or a roof over my head. So I recognize that and I'm so appreciative of that. But it also meant that leaving the country and moving out for the first time was a big change, especially going to a place where I didn't know anyone. They spoke another language and I was moving in with a partner. I went from living with my mum, no responsibilities, to all of a sudden having to build a whole new life with a person that I was only just really getting to know in a brand new country. So it was a lot. But today I want to talk about that difference between the expectation and the reality of it. There were many days in those first few months where I would end the day crying. I didn't really know what to do or where I was going. I was confused. Why did it not feel how I thought it was going to feel? I expected it to feel amazing and fun and freeing, but it actually felt somewhat entrapping. I didn't feel like I had the freedom that I thought I would. So I want to dive into all of those nuances today and hopefully help you feel a little, if you haven't moved out, a little less scared about moving out, or more scared, depending on how you look at it. But just know that you're not alone in some of the feelings you might feel. If you've just moved out, then it's okay to be a little unsure or still figuring it out, because it's not as easy as we tend to make it seem. And if you've been out of home a long time, then please grill me and tell me I'm soft for the way that I felt when I moved out. But I would guess that most people listening who have been out of home for a while probably have had a very similar period as well. So without further ado, let's jump into the episode. So I left Australia at 21, very excited about the new chapter. I was getting some independence, some freedom, a new country. I was working online. I could travel. I could surf every day, go to the gym, eat healthy. It was going to be cheap. I was excited, to say the least. I was moving in with a new girl who we had an incredible relationship. It was relatively fresh. We'd only been together 3 months at that point, and we decided to move in together in a brand new country. But all of these things were so exciting and I was really looking forward to it, and I couldn't wait to just get out of Australia and get started with it all. But then came the shock. It was way more expensive than I realized. Your time is taken up by just trying to turn a house into a home. I didn't bring much with me from Australia because it would have cost a bomb trying to travel with it. So we really started with nothing. We had a beautiful 2-bedroom villa with a pool overlooking some rice fields. It was amazing and we were so lucky, but it was really just a shell. We had to build this home. We didn't have cups, we didn't have plates or bowls or cutlery. We had a pretty average bed, but we needed to buy some proper bed linen, soap for the shower, all of these things that you just don't even consider that really make a home feel comfortable and convenient. When you first move out into a new place, you don't have them. So that really shook me a bit, and I struggled to adjust to that for sure at the start. To be honest, it wasn't until a year later that I started to feel more comfortable and finally felt like I'd figured things out a little bit. But yeah, that first year was completely the opposite to what I expected. Moving out of home is not as easy as it seems, especially when you don't have anything to move out with. And we were really lucky that we already had a dishwasher and a washing machine, but oftentimes you don't even have those things. So be aware that it's going to be way more expensive than you anticipate, and be okay with that. You're going to spend money. That's the fact of the matter. You are going to lose money on doing these things, but in the long run, you're setting yourself up. So for me, I made the sacrifice of my finances to build this new life in Bali and try it out. And yeah, I've moved back to Australia and I don't have much money, and that life created some beautiful experiences. But many would look at that like I'm behind, and that's not really the way that I see it. I learned so much from that experience that the next time I move out properly, whether it's in Australia or overseas again, I'm very confident it will take less than half the amount of time it did for me to feel comfortable again and happy in this new routine and the new life. Now, something else that I want to talk about here as well, and this isn't going to be specific to everyone because most of the time when you first leave home, you are moving close to your family. But for me, I'm a real family guy. I love being around my family. They lift me up, they support me, and I hate missing out on parts of their lives, from my grandparents knowing that they're getting older and they're not going to be around forever, to my parents knowing that they're also getting older and they miss me a lot. And then even my siblings, my sister, my stepbrothers and sisters, I want to be around for these moments. My stepsister had a kid a few years ago. Some are getting married. Like all of these things, when you leave home and you move away from the country that you were brought up in, you lose that. And I know that not everyone is lucky enough to have that family unit. But for me, I am lucky enough to have that. And the thing that hit the hardest about moving overseas is that I missed all of these moments. And sure, you've got FaceTime and phone calls and pictures, but it just doesn't, it's not the same. You know, it doesn't feel the same. You miss out on the moment. It's never as good looking back if you weren't there. So for me, that was really challenging. I remember struggling a lot with the fact that I was missing these moments and missing my family. And even though I was building this new life and creating a new family in Bali with my girlfriend and my friends and everything that was happening, I just couldn't shake the feeling that I didn't belong where I was. And that was really hard because my family were back home and I wasn't with them anymore. And for me, it's such an important part of my life, an important value of mine to be around my family and interacting with them all the time, that I was just in a constant battle with myself, telling myself that this isn't forever because I'm missing out on so much, but also this is an amazing opportunity, so enjoy it for what it is because it's not going to last forever. That was a really hard thing to come to terms with, and now that I'm home, I'm glad I made the most of the experience over there. But at the same time, I'm really happy that I'm now back around my family, and moving forward, if I plan to move overseas again, that's going to be a much weightier consideration this time around. Now, like I said, the other big part of moving out that I probably underestimated was the cost of it. You have to get really good at budgeting, but I say budgeting lightly. You don't have to think about every dollar that's going in or out, but you have to be okay with the fact that things are going to cost a lot more than what you expect. If you're lucky and you've got things already banked up, maybe your parents give you some plates and bowls and cutlery and a washing machine, then happy days. But oftentimes these are all things that you have to get for yourself when you move out, which is a massive shock at first. And it's really important that you prepare yourself for this. You're not just thinking about rent, but you got to think about utilities, the cost of setting up the home, from TV, internet, to Netflix subscriptions, to cutlery and doing the washing, and all of these things cost money. Just buying washing tablets for your washing machine is expensive. So I would recommend thinking about what these things might cost before you go and make that decision, potentially putting some money away into a separate savings account. And every month or week when you get paid, make sure you're putting a small amount away into a separate account that you can use for these sorts of things that when you do move out kind of feel like emergencies. It's really hard to live without a lot of these things. But it's really important that you prepare yourself to spend that money, because at first it can feel like your money's just going down the drain, and in a sense it is, but it's a conscious decision that you have to make to allow your future to be more comfortable and more enjoyable. Now, the other thing that I definitely underestimated is how long it takes to do things. Now, when you move out, maybe I just got really lucky in this sense, but my mum did all the cleaning, all my washing, everything. And yeah, we helped with chores here or there. I'd unpack the dishwasher or take the bins out, but really I had a very cushy upbringing. And then moving out, it was a rude shock when I realized that I had to do all the dishwashing myself. I mean, I had my partner at the time, Danny, she was helping with a lot of the washing as well. But you got to do it all yourself. You can't be lazy. If you lounge out of a night and put your dishes in the sink and you wake up in the morning, they're still going to be in the sink. You still have to wash them. There's no one to do your cleaning for you. I mean, I say that with a grain of salt because we were lucky and actually had a family who cleaned for us in Bali. And Made and Kadek, beautiful people, so incredible to have them as part of our Bali journey. But that made it a little bit easier, but most of the time it was me doing our dishes or Danny doing our dishes, and that was really challenging. Just for the time suck. Like, I'd move overseas, I had to really focus on working to make money so that I could stay overseas. But oftentimes the house chores just felt like such a drain that by the end of it, you're too exhausted to even work, or you get to the end of a long day of work and you're too exhausted to do the chores. So it's really important when you move out, if you're moving out with other people, to find someone that understands the responsibility of maintaining a home. There's a lot of things to do, and if you're not doing it as a team, that's going to start chipping away at the friendship or the relationship, and it's going to make you really not enjoy where you're at and this period of living on your own. Now, back on the family topic, this kind of ties into that a bit. Something that I noticed in moving overseas and moving out on my own was this difference between loneliness and independence. I feel like oftentimes we crave this sense of independence where we can make decisions for ourselves and do the things that we want to do. But that typically comes with a period of loneliness as well. For me, I wanted to move to Bali so that I could be completely on my own, making my own decisions, making my own money, doing my own chores, all of these things for myself. But that also came with it periods of feeling completely alone. I didn't have my family anymore. All the friends that I'd made when I was younger, I've no longer had constant contact with. And sure, we've got phones, but everyone's on a different time schedule. It's really hard to sync up and have good quality conversations over the phone with family or friends or anyone for that matter. So moving overseas, you get this, sense of independence. Moving out in general, you get this sense of independence, but you'll also find that there's periods of severe loneliness when you're at home, your new home by yourself, and it's quiet, there's no one to chat to. You'll put on Netflix to try and drown out the silence, but oftentimes when you're in that zone of loneliness, it's hard. You look at it and you're thinking, well, what do I do with myself? You try and call your family, they're not answering. Maybe your friends are out, they're not answering. And you have to be okay with this fact that for you to be on your own and be truly independent, you also have to be okay with being lonely and being truly on your own. That took a while for me to come to terms with. And I used to confuse the idea of independence and loneliness, thinking that I shouldn't feel the way that I was feeling. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I think to feel lonely is a normal human emotion, even in a relationship. You should have periods where you're on your own. And you have to get comfortable with being on your own, because at the end of the day, you are the only person that you spend 100% of your time with. So if up here is not a good place to be, then you can't expect to enjoy those periods of loneliness. So I think true independence is when you're able to make the decisions that you want to make and spend time with the people that you want to spend time with, do the things that you want to do, but also be okay when life is mundane and you're not doing anything and you're on your own, and that's fine. Enjoy your own company. Allow yourself to be slow for a while. So this little segment, I want to get quite practical. These are, I guess, the big takeaways from the specific topic that I'm talking about in each episode. So today we're talking about moving out of home. And I want to start with the 3 things that I would really think about before you leave home. Now, the first one of those is money. Make sure that you've got enough money, not just to cover rent, but to cover utilities, bills, buying cutlery, washing machine, all of these things, soap, new clothes if you need them. All of these things are going to cost a lot more money than you expect. So even if it's just a rough budget, use ChatGPT to figure out what it might cost you And understand that that money, as much as it feels like it's going to go down the drain, it is helping you build this new version of your life. So it's important that you, number one, don't skimp out too much, because you're just going to have to replace it in a few months anyway. I learned that one the hard way. And just understand that this is probably what it's going to cost you to move out on top of rent. So be okay with that. Save for it. Have a separate account and make sure that you're ready for those expenses. Now, the next big one is routine. You have to be okay with your routine changing. For me, this was the hardest part about moving overseas, or just building a new life in general, is the routine that I had built and become so comfortable with was completely obliterated. I was in a new country, new gyms, new wake up times, everything was different. So I had to be okay with no routine for a while I figured out the new routine. So understand that your routine's going to change. You got to be okay with that. It's going to be hard for a little while, because you're going to feel chaotic and living day by day as opposed to planning for the future. But for a period of time, that is fine. That's normal. That's what you're going to have to do. So you just slowly build this new routine over time, step by step. Make sure you know your priorities. Are you someone who wants to wake up early and go to the gym? Or are you someone who wants to sleep in and maybe do your work late at night? Whoever you are as a person, understand that, have your non-negotiables and start there. And then you can build the rest of your routine around those non-negotiables. And then the third major thing to think about is having a support system, whether it's your family or your friends back home, whether it's new friends that you meet in this new experience or the new place that you've moved to. Make sure that you've got people you can lean on for support. Like I said, you're going to have periods of intense loneliness, and it's nice to be able to text someone or call someone, or just go and meet up for a coffee and hang out or go for a walk. These are really important, and especially if you're living with someone else, don't just rely on that person to be your support system, because if you're spending every minute of every day with that person, it's going to lead to more problems down the line. So I recommend coming up with a bit of a support system. It can be a couple people, 1 or 2 people that you really trust and who fill your cup up. They don't drain you of energy, they make you feel more energized and ready to tackle life and excited about the future. Get those people around you and make sure that they know that this period's going to be tough for you, and you might have times where you want to lean on them for support. And then at the same time, make sure that they know they can lean on you for support as well. Now we're at the exciting part of the episode where we tackle some of your questions. This is what I'm going to call the community segment. So every Monday, I put up a story on the Uncle Nathan Instagram, and I ask a main question or tell you the topic of the episode of the week. You guys send in some questions, and this is the part where I answer those questions. So we're only episode 2 of the solo eps. I didn't expect too many responses, but we got a couple in here that I want to answer today. So the first question is, how did you start budgeting after you moved out? Like I said earlier, I think it's unhealthy to watch every single dollar that you spend, but it's also really unhealthy to not watch any of the money coming out of your account. So for budgeting, I don't think it's important to be as stringent as every single product you buy needs to go into a budget, but I think it's important to understand where your money's going in terms of categories. So you're obviously going to have your fixed costs, things like rent, bills, car payments, those sorts of things. That's what comes out of your bank account every month, regardless of what you do or how active you are or where you are. So those things have to be first in your budget, because that's happening whether you like it or not. And then after that, you've got a little bit of room for discretionary spending. So you could potentially put some money into a separate account that's going to allow you to pay for the non-negotiables around the house. Let's say you need to top up on olive oil and dishwashing tablets. Those things, we need them, but we don't really think about them. So make sure you've got a bit of money saved or ready to spend on those things. For me, one of my non-negotiables is investing. So at the beginning of every month, well, actually at the moment, at the beginning of every week, I have an automatic payment that goes from my main bank account to my investment account, and then I invest that on a fortnightly basis. I am a spreadsheet guy, but I'm not a spreadsheet guy in terms of every single line item. I track all my subscriptions. So in a spreadsheet, I have an area for subscriptions, and it just lists them from Netflix to ChatGPT to all of the other subscriptions I have line by line with their cost, when the next renewal date is, and what card it's linked to. So that helps me see how much I'm spending overall on my subscriptions every month. And I think this is one of the best areas to save money if you need to save a little bit of cash, because oftentimes we have a few $15 subscriptions that we don't blink an eye at, But if you looked at them over the year and cut 2 or 3 out, you'd save quite a bit of money. So start there. Budgeting wise, just make sure you know where your money's going for each category. Doesn't have to be dollar by dollar. Just understand the percentages. So if you're spending 50% on rent, 10% you're putting towards investments, maybe you're saving 10%, and then you've got 30% left for discretionary spending, which are your subscriptions and some other things. Something like that can work well. I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. Do your own research, but this is kind of the way that I like to do it. Now, this question I really like, and it is, how does it feel, or how did it feel to move back in with your parents after you moved out? I think, especially for where I've grown up and my experience, this is such a common thing. We move out, we're really excited about this new chapter. Maybe it doesn't go the way we want, it's too expensive, circumstances change, we lose our job, or we want to go and study something, so we have to move back in with our parents. This is what I did. I left my parents' house, moved over to Bali for 2.5 years, moved back to my parents' house just a few weeks ago. And from an ego point of view, that can be really hard. You go from living on your own, fully independent, to now back at home, older, but seemingly in a worse position than you were when you left. I moved back and had no car, not a whole lot of savings, a few investments, but nothing crazy. To many, those are steps backwards. But the way that I reframed it is like, I decided to move overseas and have these incredible experiences and grow as a person. I understand who I am and what I want out of life and where I'm going with my life. And it's all much clearer now than it was before I left. So I'm coming home not as the same person, but as a completely new and upgraded version of myself. And that's an exciting thing. And yeah, the ego takes a bit of a hit and you lose a little bit of independence. I now have to tell my mum where I'm going every night. Not that she makes me, but she worries. And now that I'm under her roof again, it's right there. She thinks about me, So it's an adjustment, but I wouldn't say it's been a negative experience in any way. In fact, I wanted to be closer to my family, so that's allowed me to be closer to my family again. It's an adjustment for sure, but it's also not forever. And if you are in that position where you're back at home, enjoy it and make the most of it. Save as much money as you can now that you're back at home, and maybe you're paying a little bit of board, but chances are you're not paying what you would be paying if you'd moved out again properly. Make the most of that. Capitalize on it. Help your parents around the house. Do the dishes. Cook one night a week. These things that you've learnt now being on your own, like cooking your own dishes and doing the house chores, allow yourself to do those things now that you're back at home. And it'll help you feel that sense of independence again and keep you in good habits for when you move out again. Now, I promised that these episodes wouldn't be too long, so I'm going to wrap it up here. But that's my experience of moving out. Now, it's not going to be the same as everyone. Obviously, I moved country to a place where living is a lot cheaper than if I was doing it here in Sydney. I was able to order Gojek and Grab every day for my food, so I didn't do a whole lot of cooking. I cooked a few things, but nothing crazy. So yeah, the experience is unique, but ultimately the feelings and the emotions and some of the things that I experienced are very similar to what it would be like moving out here in Sydney or anywhere in the world. The first time you move out, there are things that you just don't think about and don't expect. And I hope that this episode has given you a bit of an idea of what some of those things may be so that you can think about it a little bit harder, prepare yourself and reset your expectations for when the time comes. But the one thing that I do want you to take away is moving out is exciting and fun. And sure, it's exhausting and incredibly scary sometimes, but it's amazing. You get so much independence. You learn so much about yourself. You meet some great people, and it allows you to truly start to realize your own truth and live life in the way that you want to live it. So if you're in a position to do so, I recommend giving it a try. Don't break your back for it. It's important that while you're young, you make the most of the opportunity that you've got if you're still at home to save money and get yourself somewhat ahead in life. But when the opportunity arises, grab it by the balls and make the most of it. So that's me pretty much done. Now I want to give you a quick update on the book. Again, I've been ghosted by about 5 publishers now, so there's not a whole lot of movement. I think I'm going to self-publish. Haven't made the proper decision yet, but the book is still coming and it's not too late to jump into the pre-save list, have your own contribution. There'll be a link under the show notes here or on my Instagram bio where you can click on, have your own say, what you want to see in the book, what topics you want me to write about. and also pre-save the book. So when it comes out, you'll be the first to be notified. Now, I want to hear your own stories from moving out. Obviously, my experience has been quite unique. I'd love to hear about your own stories from moving out to moving back in with your parents, moving countries, or just moving down the road. All of these things are really interesting to me, and I'd love to share them with some of the community if you want me to. But if you have any stories about moving out, just send me a DM on Instagram at Uncle Nathan Co. Other than that, watch out for this Monday's Instagram story where I ask more questions about next week's episode, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.